Munchies, welcome to the channel if you're new, or if you're not, I haven't done a video explicitly around mindfulness and relationships with food in a while, and since over the holidays, stress eating, emotional eating, and binge eating tend to come up more frequently, I thought this might be the time. About a year ago, I started sharing on the channel about my own journey toward healing my relationship with food, and it really changed my life. At the beginning of this year, I really dove into sharing food freedom content and even created a course to help guide others through some of the work. So if you are struggling with an unhealthy relationship with food and turning to food to cope with stress or emotions, I hope that this video can help. First, it's important to acknowledge what an unhealthy relationship with food is, as well as what a healthy relationship with food is. A lot of the people I work with one-on-one are clients who come to me and initially they say they want a healthy relationship with food, and it becomes clear that they sort of think that means that they'll love to eat salad all the time and they'll never give in to cravings and they'll never want to eat cake. Now, of course, only you know what your healthy relationship with food looks like to you. But to me, it's about how I relate to food, right? Relate. So if I have a lot of judgments around foods being good or bad or allowed or not allowed, if I have rules, then I relate to food in this kind of dualistic way. And I tend to internalize that as a reflection of myself. So it's not just that the food is good or bad, but that I am good or bad if I eat certain foods. So healing my relationship with food was really about healing my relationship with myself. And that involves taking the morality out of food. We are not good or bad people based on what we eat. Period. You are worthy regardless of what you eat. The next thing to acknowledge is that every transformation requires transition. Okay, so no transformation happens overnight, and that includes healing our relationship with food. So if you think about a before and after photo of a weight loss journey, for example, so people tend to become inspired by seeing this difference, right? They're like, whoa, look at where that person was and look at where they are now. But what's missing in that is all of the transitional moments between that the person had to go through. Right? So why don't they include every single transition moment in that before and after? Well, first of all, because you can't. You know, every moment is a moment of transition. This one and this one and this one and that. But also because a lot of the transition moments seem boring or not worth noting or noticing, right? Nothing is happening right in this moment. I'm the same right now as I am, right now, right? So it can seem like there's not much happening. When trying to lose weight, we won't look very different from one moment to the next, or one day to the next, and even sometimes 1 week to the next. We might need a snapshot comparison of months even to really see the difference. But then you really only end up seeing just that. It's a snapshot. It's not the full picture. Okay, so in the same way with healing your relationship with food, it's a slow process, right? Where little by little we get to know ourselves and explore a different way of being with food and with ourselves. And I can't teach you everything I've learned in this video, but I wanted to give you a few key strategies that might help you during this holiday season if food becomes a stressor. But keep in mind, these are long-term strategies for people who really want that healing, not Band-Aids. So the first of which is practicing mindfulness. And I share this with my clients that I healed my relationship with food through mindfulness, not mindful eating, okay? Now, mindfulness and specifically meditation really helped me learn to be here now in this present moment. If you think about binge eating, we don't binge when we're present. That's probably why most of the time before we realize it, we've finished the entire bag of this or box of that. It is mindless rather than mindful. So if we can be present more often, we can make conscious choices rather than reacting compulsively and without awareness. We can respond rather than react. I often use this framework that I've created called blips of awareness. So essentially, we spend most of our waking hours on autopilot, and research has shown that our mind is wandering more often than it's not. It's part of being human. And if you've ever sat down to meditate, most people notice that the mind wanders away pretty quickly, pretty regularly on its own. So meditation helps to train the brain to be more present. I look at it as a practice of being present. When I sit down to meditate in the morning, this is when I'm practicing being present. So if I have this autopilot baseline and the top of this graph of sorts is conscious awareness, then every time I go from autopilot to being aware, so like if I sit down to meditate, I create this sort of blip of awareness that lasts for some period of time while I'm practicing. And a blip doesn't have to be meditation. It's anything that brings me back to that present moment, to that conscious awareness, which only happens through the senses. So it could be, I'm washing the dishes and I notice the smell of the soap, or I feel the warm water on my hands. I could take a few mindful breaths in the middle of the day. I could go for a walk while paying attention to how it feels in my feet or the breeze on my skin. All of these moments are like little blips of awareness, and we come into awareness and then at some point our mind wanders away. So my goal with this framework, this understanding, is not necessarily to be conscious in every single moment, because I am an imperfect human and that's just not possible, but rather, can I bring more moments of consciousness to my day, and perhaps at some point more moments of awareness than not. We can only make a responsive choice from the present moment, from that top of the graph. So if I'm here now and aware, paying attention, I have agency, this ability to choose. And this is how we regain control over food rather than feeling the food is controlling us. We respond with an intentional choice rather than react compulsively without awareness. Okay, so it's not easy. And even now that I've healed my relationship with food, I still struggle, especially this time of year, because it's just hard. It's a stressful time with family and friends and finances and time, and food is comforting, right? So there's nothing wrong with you looking for comfort amidst chaos. And that would be my next recommendation, is to have a list of healthy coping mechanisms on hand that you can turn to for support when it gets tough. Many people turn to food as a maladaptive coping mechanism. They want relief. The present moment is uncomfortable and they want to get away from it and find something else that's comfortable. It makes sense, right? So we all need coping mechanisms, and I encourage you to actually make a list. So some of my go-tos, coping mechanisms that make me feel better: going for a walk, talking to a friend, cuddling with a pet, watching a show that I love, expending some energy through exercise or doing a craft. Now, I look at coping mechanisms as a way to be with whatever is coming up in me rather than a distraction. And sometimes it's true, when we're really activated, we might need a way to just, get through this moment or get away from this moment for a minute to kind of calm down. But at some point, to really cope, we have to acknowledge what we're feeling. So what are things that you can do to help you stay with that emotion and kind of explore it a bit? One of my favorite tools to use and share with others is a feelings list and feelings wheel. And I'll actually link these in the description box below for you to download. But I do this in the morning as a daily practice, and I try to grab this when I'm activated as well, is can I find a word or two to name my feeling in this moment? So this helps to increase emotional intelligence and the ability to regulate my emotions, which is imperative to healing our relationship with food. And I've done videos on that in the past. If we tune into the feeling, we may also be able to ask ourselves, what is the need that I have in this moment that's not being met? So humanistic psychology suggests that negative emotions are tied to unmet needs. The point here is not to remove all negative emotions, but rather to see how can we meet our needs more fully. It's also important to acknowledge that food can be a coping mechanism. And I sort of take an unpopular or kind of controversial approach when I say, and I share this with clients, I think food actually can be okay as a coping mechanism. It only becomes a problem if it's our only coping mechanism, and it also becomes a problem if we're not aware while we're turning to it. So sometimes I do still today turn to food for comfort. It's comforting. It's a comforting sensory experience. But the question is, can I be present with it? If I really want food to comfort me, then I want to pay attention to how it tastes, the delicious flavor and texture and what I love about it, to notice the comfort that it provides, to be mindful rather than engage mindlessly, right? My next offering is to give yourself permission to enjoy the foods you love, to notice the rules that you have around food and notice tendencies to restrict or to not allow certain foods. So research shows that restriction and dieting actually lead to binge eating. And I like to use the example of a rebellious teenager. So when you're a teenager and your parents tell you you can't do something, what do you want to do? Exactly that thing that they told you couldn't do, right? So it's kind of similar with food, I've found in my experience. When we tell ourselves no, somehow it becomes all we can think about. There's this scarcity around it. And letting go of the rules, letting go of this dualistic thinking, it's scary because it seems like, well, then what do I cling to now? How do I know what to eat if I don't have any rules? Well, we know what to eat by learning to listen to our bodies, to listen to our hunger and our fullness and our emotions and what our entire mind body are telling us. It's what I call inner wisdom. And I've done a video on that in the past as well. So letting go of the rules means every food is allowed. And when there's no food that's bad and every food is allowed, then some of those foods that we used to think were bad can kind of become disenchanting. I don't need to eat 12 donuts just because they're here if I actually know and believe that in any moment I could go get a donut and give it to myself and eat it if I really wanted. If I could actually give myself permission to do that. So I encourage you always, but especially during the holidays, to give yourself permission to enjoy. And rather than rules or guilt or judgment, can you challenge yourself to be present with the experience and enjoy it fully? Noticing how delicious it is, and while also being conscious and aware. So the final suggestion I'll touch on here is practicing self-compassion and non-judgment. These are huge concepts in mindfulness. So judgment is really a block. And it stems from black and white thinking. So if you're someone who has that black and white thinking pattern strongly, and most of us with an unhealthy relationship with food do have this pattern, then we also probably have strong patterns of judgment. It might be judgment of others, it might be judgment of ourselves, judgment of what's good and bad, because judgment is this duality. It's good, it's bad, it's yes or no, it's black, it's white, right? But mindfulness, the definition of mindfulness that I share on this channel is a non-judgmental awareness of the present moment, okay? Non-judgmental. So if judgment is there, we actually can't be mindful. It's not mindfulness if there's judgment there. It's essential to be non-judgmental, to really be in the present moment. And the first step here is just noticing judgment's here right now. So start by just noticing the judgments that you have around food, the rules. Simply noticing is enough to begin to change the pattern, because usually we're not noticing and we're acting compulsively. But when we start to notice, we're present, and then we have this ability to go, what do I want to do now? We have choice, agency. I also look at self-compassion as the sort of antidote to judgment. Self-compassion is simply talking to yourself as you would a friend. If you think of a time recently when you made a mistake, or maybe you ate too much or something like that, consider if this was your best friend and they came to you and they said, I ate too much and this is what happened and I'm feeling really terrible about it, what would you say to them? I actually encourage you to do this as a journaling prompt, and I have my clients do this. Write down a letter. What would you say to this friend? And then read it back to yourself, and then consider, how is it different than the tone that you usually take with yourself? Probably you're not going to tell your friend, you're disgusting, just stop doing that, get a grip, get it together, right? You're going to be kind and understanding and reasonable because you're a good human being. Self-compassion is not about making excuses for yourself. It's about seeing clearly without that block of judgment. So there are some approaches that I hope can support you this holiday season. These are not Band-Aid strategies, which for some of you might be frustrating, right? These are tactics to use if you are really wanting a lasting shift in the way we relate to food and to ourselves. I encourage you to really get curious about and get to know your relationship with food and start to see yourself clearly. How do you relate to food right now? What emotions and thoughts and judgments and rules do you have around food? Really get curious and be willing to explore as best you can without judgment. If you enjoy this kind of content and want more, let me know in the comments. And also in the description, like I said, I included those feelings list and feelings wheel. You can download those for free. And I also included a link for a wait list, a sign up list for my program. So I think in January, I might restart a 10-week small group program for healing emotional eating and relationships with food through mindfulness, depending on interest. So sign up to let me know if you would be interested in that. And if you want a quick run through of this kind of food freedom style content, I have also linked my food freedom course in the description, which is a paid course. Regardless of your path and approach forward with food, I hope that you can be kind to yourself. You know, this stuff is really hard. And just remember that the way you eat says nothing about you as a person. Okay, you are perfect just as you are. And I know I didn't used to believe that about myself, and a lot of days I still don't, right? But the work of self-discovery, I think, is trusting that it is true and that you are worthy just as you are. So I hope you know that I see you and I love you. I hope you'll subscribe if you want more content like this. I'll see you soon with more videos. And remember, seriously, it is all a matter of mind over munch.